This episode may contain language or discussions that may be offensive or triggering. Refer to the episode summary for details. Welcome to the SheConfidential Podcast, y'all. This is Charlene Ketchum, and today I am chatting again with De-Andrea Blaylock-Solar, and you probably remember her from season 1, where we talked about just really the background on why so many of us have challenges with finding our pleasure in our own bodies, and just how our perceptions and conditioning can impact the way we view ourselves and the way we experience our bodies and the way we experience intimacy with others. So check out that episode if you have not already. But today we are chatting about a little bit of everything
A
related
little bit of
to
everything.
the benefits of having a professional to talk to about everything related to your genitals and just intimacy, body image, um, pop culture, Netflix series, Love, Sex, and Goop. And we're going to talk about, is it possible to pleasure yourself too much? Well, you look beautiful and you're
Thank you.
glowing, and
Thank you.
I'm
You
so
look
excited. I
beautiful
feel
as
like it's
well.
been forever since we talked.
I know. I know. How you been doing?
Good. I mean, really good. I'm really excited about continuing with the podcast, and I enjoy
Hmm.
it. And I have just met like the most amazing people, just
Good.
expanding the sisterhood. And it's been
Hmm.
really helpful for me on a personal level because I work from home and I
Yeah.
don't do as much as I used to do because of COVID
Hmm.
and everything. Like
Hmm.
you and I were going to get together in person, and then
Right.
everything just went crazy again.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
it's been really nice because I feel like I've actually been connecting with more people during the
Yeah.
last year than I have when we were out in the world, because I'm spending more
Hmm.
time like actually talking to people and getting to know them and what's important to them, and like,
Yeah.
wow, I don't think I took this kind of time with people before because you had so much to do. You had to be on to the next thing. So
Absolutely.
I'm actually grateful for this. I mean, I'm not grateful for COVID, but
No, but I get what you're saying.
yeah.
Yeah, I get it. I get it for sure. I definitely appreciate I think that it has actually expanded my network because we've moved to doing so many things online. I'm able to get into spaces where normally they would only try to stay local, but
Yeah.
uh, because of Zoom and all other media, they're able to bring me in and not have to pay for travel. So,
Mhm.
so it works out really well.
Yeah. The internet, I think we took it for granted before COVID, but now
Oh yeah.
that's all we got. It's our link to the world. Like now if the internet went down.
Now listen, that would be a problem. That would be a big problem because most people, even their access to media, like they're not. A lot of people don't have cable, um, or they'll just do streaming platforms as
Mhm.
opposed to like they may not even have a digital antenna to get local
Yeah.
channels. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I'm all
Internet.
streaming platforms. You know, I got
Oh
rid of
really?
cable and all that.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm
Yeah.
that person. I was like, I cut the cord. Although I don't know. Well, I know I'm saving money, but it still gets kind of expensive because everybody has a
Mhm.
platform with different things. And I'm sharing all my
Yeah.
stuff with like everybody. So
Yes.
it's like I'm not
Yes.
even seeing all the stuff that's on all these platforms I'm paying for.
But everybody benefits. Like, and it's funny. So I have one older sister and my cousin he's 6 days older than my sister, so he's like my big brother.
Okay.
So he pays for Disney Plus. She pays for Apple
Hmm.
Plus and Apple TV rather,
Okay.
and I pay for Amazon, and so we just share.
See, that makes it work.
Hmm.
Which makes me think of when we talk about streaming platforms, that makes me think of Netflix's what Love, Sex, and Goop.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you said, I think you said you saw that when it first came out.
Yeah, I did. I didn't get a chance to revisit it, but I do, remember a lot of it. And I appreciated it for a lot of different reasons. One, that, well, I'll start by saying that the practitioners that were shown were not sex therapists.
Yeah.
They were, still sexuality educators, or they may go by like sex coach or sex practitioner or even sex worker, because therapists, we don't include touch. We're mental health practitioners, and so um, we're held by our license by certain ethical boundaries and
Hmm.
whatnot. So we can't and don't include touch in our work. However, the work that was depicted in the show was still very valuable and very helpful. And I'm glad that they did show a different side of that. Actually, I'm in an organization called Women of Color Sexual Health Network, and the Black woman that was shown, the Tantra practitioner, she's a member of the organization. I was just so excited to see her. I
Oh
was like,
wow.
yes, sis. Um, but yeah, she does amazing work in Atlanta, I believe,
Yes, yes.
with Tantra. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's
Was she
amazing.
the one with the blueprints or was she the one that did the mirror exercise? Because I know the
Now
one,
that I can't remember. I think it was,
was it the black lady?
was it only one Black practitioner?
Yeah, she was the one who did the mirror exercise. Yeah, she is
Yeah.
in Atlanta. I did look
Mhm.
her up on social media after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes. Yeah. When
Yeah,
that
she's
little exercise in itself was like, wow. Like, I
mm,
don't think I've ever stood in front of, well, yeah, I mean, probably years ago, but never like with intentionality to like really look at my
mhm.
body and do like this, not critique, but
But an
just exploring a
appreciation.
visual
Mhm.
exploration. I was like, wow.
Mhm. Yeah, I think for a lot of reasons we grow to shame, um, a- and we're not able to really look directly at ourselves for a lot of different reasons. It could be things from religion, it could be things from family, or just our community as a whole. And we get these messages that it's not okay to do that, or that if our bodies look different than what is put out as being so called desirable, then you shouldn't appreciate it. And I really did like that activity. I found a lot of value in that, because it gives you an opportunity to explore what you have
Yes.
and appreciate what you have and what this wonderful body can do, and all of the many different ways that you can experience pleasure.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Just, yeah, I was really interested at what you thought about the show because I was blown away. First of all, some of the roles, I was like, I've never heard of this type
Uh
of
huh.
clinician or practitioner. And
Yeah.
some of I was like, oh my gosh, like that's
Hmm.
a lot. I was like, I know therapists don't do all that. Um,
Right.
but it
Right.
was
Right.
amazing. What I did appreciate is how they matched them. It seems like they matched them very
Hmm.
well for the
Hmm.
practitioner who would be perfect for their particular needs.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too. Um, the maybe some of the reason why you haven't heard of this different type of work is because sex surrogacy is not legal everywhere. So although there may be
Mhm.
people, excuse me, who do this type of work, they don't widely advertise depending on where they live, because what
Oh,
they're doing is considered prostitution, and they could be, in jailed for that.
yeah,
Although it's still very therapeutic, very
yeah,
helpful work. So I find a lot of value, like I said, in that type of work. However, those practitioners have to be very careful in the spaces where they are sharing their gifts and their talents.
yeah, absolutely. And it's it's so interesting to me because when you think about therapy or just help, because what they're doing is not, I don't want to call what they're doing therapy.
Mhm, mhm,
But when you talk about support and help for anything other than sexual behavior, we don't have all
mhm.
those restrictions on it.
No,
Like, I've
no, you
seen
don't.
different documentaries and things about some things that we do with for children with behavioral disorders and things, and some of that stuff seems downright abusive to me. But
Mhm.
is that's not something people have to hide that they're doing. And I'm like,
No.
but when it comes to anything related to sexuality or sexual behavior or sex education, that's got to be real low key, done in the
Or
shadows.
and I'll say maybe not even just sex or sexuality. I'll even say genitals.
Yeah.
If it's not a let's say a GYN or a urologist. Um, I'm thinking about how a lot of people are not even aware of pelvic floor physical therapy being an option to help with a lot of different issues.
Mm-hmm.
And but that's something that involves genitals, and people are like, ah, we don't talk about that. But it's a part just like your arm.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you're experiencing dysfunction, you go
Hmm.
to the people who are trained to help you, get things back on track. So
Yeah. Yeah, an excellent example, because
mhm,
I had an episode last season with a guest where we talked about the benefits of pelvic floor therapists and just all
mhm.
the things they can assist with. And
Oh yeah.
I had conversations with so many people who were like, I never knew that those people existed, and are they in every
Yeah.
state? And I'm like,
Uh-huh.
yeah, yeah, they are, but we
Mhm.
don't talk about it. And even unfortunately, a lot of times our primary care physicians don't even mention them. Because
Mm-mm.
I was actually
No.
talking to someone recently, and she was telling me she was getting a hysterectomy. And I said, well, you may want to have a consult with a pelvic floor therapist after, your surgery. 'Cause she was going in like that week. And I said, just
Mhm.
preventatively, I'm not saying that you're going to have issues, but it may be good just to go see one to see, like, what can I do to, because that's a trauma, to your pelvic
Mhm.
region. So that might be really
Mhm.
helpful for you to do. And she's like, wow, I never thought about that. I said, girl, I wouldn't have suggested it had I not just talked to someone and really got educated about the importance of being proactive, that we
Mhm.
can be proactive. And, a lot of us hear about the pelvic floor exercises, or Kegels as they're more popularly known. And everybody's talking about, you got to Kegel, you got to keep, you got Kegel, you got to tighten it up. Uh,
You don't want to get too tight now.
right.
Because if the muscles are too tight, then you then have other issues.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's I was actually just thinking that same thing, how I see a lot of people talking about, stop right now and do your Kegels.
Yes.
Don't do that, because we know how to tighten the muscle, but we're not taught how to completely relax it.
Yeah.
And you can, like I said, have issues when that muscle group is too tight.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It's just, there's so much that we could be educated about.
oh yeah.
And so in your coaching business, is this something like that you were envisioning, kind of, or even in your as a therapist now, is that something that you cover with your clients?
Yeah, I do. So I work with other practitioners
Okay.
and refer out to other practitioners depending on needs. So I'll use the example of erectile dysfunction,
Okay.
which can be caused by a lot of different things. Now, if someone comes to me with the complaint of erectile dysfunction, I will ask them to work with their physician or refer them to a physician to get a physical workup to see if there are any blood flow issues. Have we tried any medications to assist with that? And if everything is all right in that space, okay, cool. Now let's look and see if there's a psychological component to the erectile dysfunction. And then I can work on it from that end. So, yeah, I
Okay.
definitely will refer my clients to working with other practitioners, specifically for pelvic floor physical therapists. If I have clients with vulvas who are complaining of pain with sex,
Mhm.
or whether that would be something called vaginismus, which is the involuntary constriction of the outer third of the vaginal muscles.
Mhm.
Um, I would suggest that they work with a pelvic floor physical therapist in addition to working with me, so that we can kind of have a holistic approach to everything. Because it could be related to trauma that we may need to process. Or it could not be related to that as well. It could just be a muscle issue, but that's why it's important to have a team that
Mhm.
really understands the issue and can work together to make sure you get the services that you need.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what's the status on them expanding the ability for clinicians to be and therapists to be able to work with clients outside of their state, their primary state of licensure?
So, because licensure for social workers and most mental health practitioners is state to state, you have to be licensed in that state to provide services to people who live there. So, I have a lot of colleagues who are licensed in multiple states.
Okay.
So, even though, like, for example, my therapist lives in Texas, but she's
Mm.
licensed in Texas and Missouri.
Okay.
So she's able to provide therapy to me. However, I'm only licensed in Missouri. Now, there are a few different ways to still provide services if you're not licensed in that state. For example, I am going to be expanding into coaching. And because coaching is not a mental health service,
Mm-hmm.
I can provide that across state lines. But I have to be very strategic with how I do that. Like, I'll have a separate business entity for my coaching practice.
Okay.
Um, like, I'm not doing coaching services to the same people I'm doing therapy for.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be completely separate.
Okay.
Um, so it's not doing the same thing, but it allows me to work with people outside of Missouri.
Okay. I noticed
Mhm.
that because I've worked with a couple of coaches who are also therapists, and I hadn't thought about that until you just mentioned that, because I noticed they have always have two separate businesses. It's not
Yeah.
one business and they offer coaching and therapy. It's always two separate
Mhm.
businesses. So I guess that's
Mhm.
something you have to do to make it clear that these are counseling services and these are coaching.
Yep, absolutely. For a lot of different reasons, but the biggest one is so that the licensing boards understand that difference,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't get caught up in their misunderstanding.
Yeah. Yeah. I hopefully things start to expand. I know that there was some talk of maybe like temporary expansions due to
Yeah,
the need
so
and
they did.
everything.
Yeah, they did end up providing temporary licensure for Illinois, um, for Missouri clinicians.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it expired or if it was just like a small window of time where you could just kind of easily get that licensure. But Missouri and Illinois have really good licensure reciprocity.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah.
Okay. So it kind of sounds
Some
like how it
states
is
don't.
for attorneys too. So is it like after a
Uh-huh.
certain amount of time? Because I know most states will allow you to automatically, I mean, you just have to do probably maybe like the character and fitness part, and that's just money. They just want money for that part. And then after 10 years, you can be admitted into any state bar.
Yeah, it's not always about time, but it is about the different states' requirements. So, most states have really good reciprocity for clinical social work, even though they may call their licensure something different. Like, you basically have to submit the same type of information to prove that you have done all of this education and completed all of these clinical hours to have this licensure in your state. And then most states will be like, oh, okay, Gucci, you're good. Come on in.
Okay.
But California and Florida are like the two outliers. You pretty much have to completely start over your licensure process if you're wanting to get licensed in those two states.
Okay.
But everywhere else, it's a bit more flexible.
Okay. That makes sense.
Mhm.
Huh. That's always interesting to me. I mean, and I think looking at
Yeah.
these licensing requirements is one of the things that the big wigs need to look at when we talk about expanding access.
Yes. Yes. But also, we live in a capitalistic society
Yeah.
where their focus
Yeah.
is often the bottom line and not necessarily like really expanding access to people who need it. It's like, yeah, it
Mhm.
sounds good to expand access, but like how we gonna make this money? So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's it
Hmm.
all comes down to money.
It
Always.
always, girl. It's a little depressing,
Yeah.
but that's the system in which we're working right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there are other ways to, I don't want to say work around it, but other ways to honor other systems of community. So, for example, I have a couple of sliding scale spots and a couple of pro bono spots.
Mm-hmm.
And when those spots are taken, they're taken. But that like I still got to pay my bills, and also
Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure that people have access to quality mental health services.
Exactly.
So I may have one pro bono client and two clients who I'll do slide and scale for.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like that's one way that I try to,
Yes.
try to rock with that.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. And that sounds, I'm doing a workshop next week for Anthem, the insurance
Oh,
company, and it's about
uh-huh.
self care for the servant heart. And
Oh,
so I was really thinking about, targeting it for people who work in social services, people who work in healthcare delivery, because people who are
mhm.
drawn to those industries, they typically are the folks who have the biggest heart. They want to give everything, that so much they
You
leave
can't give
nothing
everything.
for themselves. They're so depleted.
You can't give everything.
Mm-mm.
Like I remember I was talking to a sex therapy colleague when I was right before I started the certification process, a black woman, black sex therapist in Atlanta. And I was talking about not wanting to charge too much. And she was like, now listen, you can't be the poor and needy and help the poor and needy. I was like, well, shut
Hmm.
your mouth.
Okay,
Okay.
now.
Okay. And that's when she was like,
Mhm.
I understand your desire to serve the community and
Mhm.
keep your rates at a certain level. And also there are different ways to do that. You set your rate. So if this particular client pays half of it or a certain percentage, that's all right. You'll make it balance out with the people who can pay your full rate, but charge your full rate. I'm like, you
Mhm.
right. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Absolutely. But we have to be taught that.
we do. We're not taught these things,
Yeah.
and so I'm very grateful for the people who I've had along the way to pull me aside, be like, "Nah, sis, it's a different way to do this."
Yes. Yes. And, my friends and I, we were talking about this the other day. Like everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, but everybody doesn't understand how to run a business. And
Straight up,
psh, it's like,
straight up.
I told them, I said, you couldn't have been more blunt than that, because it's the
And
truth.
I'll be honest, I am not interested in being an entrepreneur. I just want to be a therapist, but I have to be an entrepreneur
Yeah.
because ain't nobody hiring sex therapists. So
Hmm.
that's just I have to create my own opportunities to do the work I want to do, which means
Yeah.
I have to be an entrepreneur
Yeah.
because it's not easy. I ain't interested in this. I like my job where I get a check
Yes.
and benefits and a pension, but here we are.
Yes. I had a couple of people, actually about 3 or 4 people, who said next time you talk to a therapist, ask them about is it possible for somebody to watch too much pornography? Is it possible
Mm-hmm.
for somebody to masturbate too much? And I actually had both like men and women ask about the masturbation question. So those are the other topics that we'll kind of get into. I think I think what's really interesting about people asking those questions is I think is a really good thing because people are really starting to question why they're doing what they're doing and if it's
Mm-hmm.
preventing them from being able to actually have intimacy. And I'm not talking about the physical aspects, but really be able to connect with another
Mm-hmm.
person. Because I saw a post on Facebook the other day that said, you know, women are independent now, they're making their money, they can buy sex toys, they really don't have a need, you know, for a partner because they've got everything that they need. And I thought that's so not true though, y'all.
That's not
It's
true.
not
That's not
true.
true.
Like, first of
It
all, you can give yourself a hug, but it's not the same as a hug from another person.
no.
You you need companionship.
Yes. Yes, that's it. The rose is great. It's not the same as a hard leg next to you in the
Yeah,
bed. Like
facts.
and so I think it's a very interesting question, a very common question. Both of them, you know, can you watch too much porn, or is can you masturbate too much? So I'm thinking of a few different things that come to mind. So a lot of times when people ask the question about masturbation, specifically people with vulvas, um, they are thinking about, is there a possibility to overuse toys? Like, will I desensitize my clitoris or something like that? And there, you can find anything on the internet that'll tell you anything, but I'm gonna tell you, the clitoris is not something that will become desensitized by a vibrating toy. Now, what can happen is that you can kind of train your body to orgasm a certain way, and this is for anyone regardless of their genitals. But if you kind of train your body to only orgasm while you're laying this particular way with this particular toy at this particular speed, your brain kind of gets used to that. And so when you connect with a partner, your body may not respond with an orgasm. So that doesn't mean that your clitoris is desensitized. It's just that's how things are wired. So, with that, one way to deal with that is to kind of change up your masturbation routine. Maybe change the setting. If you're usually masturbating with your dominant hand, maybe masturbate with your non dominant hand. And understand that, excuse me, the purpose of every sexual experience does not have to be orgasm. Like, that doesn't have to be the end goal. It could be to experience pleasure. And I get a lot of flack when I say that. They're like, well, what you mean? Like, I don't go to the ice cream store just to look at the ice cream, you know. And I get that.
But
However,
don't you enjoy every scoop of the ice cream?
you know what I'm
You're not
saying?
just happy
Like,
when it's done.
you might not get the cherry at the end. You might look at the cherry and be like, I don't want that today. But like, the ice cream was
Yeah.
delicious. And so when the focus is pleasure, you're taking orgasm off of a pedestal. You know, there's not as much pressure to achieve that. And so there are a lot of reasons why that can be very helpful, because some people have challenges with having orgasms, whether it's through partnered sex or solo sex, or they may not even really understand what an orgasm is. And that take me a whole nother conversation. But back to the whole idea of, can you masturbate too much? And so, like I said, regardless of genitals, if you are used to masturbating a certain way, your body just kind of gets used to orgasming in that way. So you have to retrain your brain to experience pleasure in different ways. So again, you're not desensitizing your clitoris, but your brain is just kind of used to that pattern. Um, Another thing I'm thinking about is the idea of does solo sex have a place in partnered relationships? And I think that it does. I think that when you are expecting another person to fulfill all of your sexual needs, that can put a lot of pressure on them, especially
Mhm.
if you are someone who has a different sex drive than your partner. Um, Now, what you may want to kind of evaluate your patterns with is if you're noticing that you are preferring solo sex to partnered sex, and
Mm.
really examine what's going on there. Is that something that's related to relationship dissatisfaction? Um,
Mhm.
or your dissatisfaction with your sexual experiences with your partner. And so then it becomes an avoidant behavior, right? So that's when it
Mm.
can become an issue. Um, because if you're in a partnered relationship where you're having sex with each other and you're avoiding that, then that can be a flag for something else happening. So the short answer is not necessarily, but if it becomes an issue where you're noticing that it is affecting your relationship or the way that you're able to connect with your partner, then it could be an issue. If you're noticing that um, you would prefer to watch porn than to connect with your partner, okay, let's look at that. Not necessarily that you're becoming addicted to it, but is it causing you distress in other areas of your life? Are you unable to complete your regular duties of life because you just have to masturbate or you have to watch porn at this moment? Then it may be a compulsivity, it may be an out of control behavior. That's a different thing. But like I said, these conditions kind of have to be in place, and to see how it affects you, how it affects your life, and how it affects your um, relationship.
Yeah. And everything that you talked about really highlighted the importance of communication in
Hmm.
relationships, which is
Hmm.
often like talking about money and sex are
Mm.
probably the two most difficult things for partners to talk about, even married couples, because
Oh yeah.
we don't have a blueprint for navigating those
Hmm.
conversations, and
Hmm.
those can really go. They're so connected to deep rooted things within us, that some things that we're not even aware of. So
Hmm.
those are hard
Absolutely.
conversations to have. So how do you suggest like people, so one of the things that I took away from the Netflix series was really the importance of, like, I'm like, man, with marriage counseling, you have to talk about sex in marriage counseling, because I saw.
Well, you would think. I will say I've had a lot of clients come to me and like they'll say, "I'm so glad we found you because we went to this therapist and they said, well, I don't talk about sex." I'm like, "How are you a relationship counselor when you don't talk about sex?
Mhm.
What you doing?"
Yeah.
But they out here. So, but anyway, I just had to throw that in.
Oh yeah, I mean, but no, it's true. I mean, I've had conversations with people who've gone to, relationship therapists, either before their marriage or during their marriage, and a lot of, and I don't know if I think it's equally men and women, but that
Mhm.
they may have some challenges or concerns they want to talk about related to sex, and they're hoping the therapist might bring it up,
We'll bring it up.
but they
Hmm.
don't. Or if they initiate it and bring it up, the therapist doesn't really dig into that. And
Mm.
I think it's because a lot of them don't, that's not their area. And in fact, one person told me their therapist said, well, I'm not a sex therapist, and that you would have to see somebody else, for that. She was like, that's the main reason we went. All these, I mean,
Yeah,
it's, of course, sex really is never really about sex. It's about a lot of other things too. But she's like,
it's the tip of the
yeah,
iceberg.
we need to talk about those things too. And she was so irritated. She's like, we've spent months here trying
Oh,
to, and it
wow.
wasn't easy to get her husband to go. And after
Mhm.
months, this is, this is the outcome that you can't help us ultimately.
Ah,
Uh,
that's awful. That's awful.
yeah.
But it's unfortunately very common. Like I hear it all the time. And they'll come to my office and are very grateful, that this service exists and that they're able to get help for it. And like you said, a lot of times sex is just the tip of the iceberg, but it's still something that we need to talk about.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So when you have a couple, either, and I'm assuming you'll see couples, even those who weren't married, they're dating and they want to
mhm,
come in and
mhm.
talk. And how do you approach things when people are thinking they have sexual incompatibility challenges? Because one of the things I took from that series is that there's really no such thing as incompatibility. It's just about being able to communicate about what your needs are and whether you can actually reciprocate, meet that person's needs.
Right. Yeah, I ask all the questions.
Okay.
Like, I am nosy by nature and I just be wanting to know all the things. And so I ask all the questions and it gives me, and the therapeutic term is an assessment,
Yes.
but I'm all up in your stuff and I'm asking all the things. And once I'm able to get a good assessment of what's going on, then me and my clients can come together and form a treatment plan so we can see what is it that we're really wanting to work on.
Hmm.
So when I'm working with those in relationship, I do a 4 session assessment. The first session is, which is an investment, but
Hmm.
it gives me an opportunity to really understand
Yeah.
what's going on and get a full picture. So the first session, I'm seeing the couple, and then I do 2 individual sessions with each partner, and
Oh,
then
ooh,
we
I
come
like
back
that.
together as a couple. Yeah, because sometimes there are things that are challenging to say in front of your partner. Um,
Exactly.
yeah, and it's not that like I'm not a secret keeper
Right.
as far like I'm held to confidentiality.
Right.
I'm not gonna tell your business. But what you not gonna do is tell me that you cheating on your partner
Okay.
and then not disclose that to your partner. Like that ain't what's happening here.
Right.
But if it's a situation of one partner saying, I am really not satisfied with our sex and I'm not sure how to explain that or how to convey that to my partner. I love my partner, but I'm just
Yeah.
not having a good time. Cool. That's something we can work on, you know. But
Yeah.
yeah, so it's very helpful to do an assessment in that way, so that I can get a good picture and each partner can then feel heard and seen
Yeah.
and understood so that we can then come together and form a treatment plan, set out goals that make sense for everyone involved.
So when should couples come to see you?
You know, a lot of times people come to see me uh when it's real bad.
Yeah.
You don't often go to the doctor when things are good unless it's an annual checkup.
Yeah.
It's like, well, this is just my tune up. Uh,
Hmm.
excuse me, just to make sure things are good. That would be helpful if clients did that. And I do have some clients who do that now, but a lot of times they come to me when it's rough, so we work through the rough stuff. However, one of the offerings that I will be providing is something called honeymoon coaching, where I will be working with couples uh, shortly after they are married, or it doesn't even have to be married, but like when things are, it feels okay, but we just want to make sure that we have these conversations about money, these
Hmm.
conversations about sex, that we may not have had before we got married.
Yeah.
And so I'll be providing that service hopefully second quarter of this year.
I love that. And so people can come to you for every, I mean, you are a licensed clinical therapist, so they can come to you
Mhm.
for matters beyond just sexuality. It's full relationship, intimacy, anything
Mhm.
related to you and your life and your
Yeah.
well-being.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, but I have advanced training in sexuality and relationship therapy. So, my practice is primarily sexuality and relationship therapy. I do have a few clients where, our goals are related more so to anxiety or depression.
Mhm.
However, sexuality is in there somewhere, whether they identify along the spectrum of gender, they may be gender expansive. And so they want a therapist who's going to honor their pronouns
Yeah,
and it's certain things that they may not want to have to explain in
yeah,
every session, so they'll come to me, and I get that.
absolutely.
And I'm glad that I'm able to provide that service. Or people who may identify along the spectrum of sexuality and are identify as Christian, and so they want an affirming therapist who hold space for them to have these conversations or these thoughts, as it relates to sexuality and their faith. So,
You
yeah.
just gave me a topic.
Really?
You just gave me like four. I was like,
Okay,
let me
good.
like jot this down. Like, oh my gosh, because I think I've been thinking a lot about um I think I'm using the terms right, like as a cisgender
Hmm.
heterosexual person, I'm really
Hmm.
ignorant to a lot of
Hmm.
things. And
Me
so
too.
I've been really trying to learn just for
Hmm.
like to just understand what
Yeah.
is happening with a lot of people, because I
Hmm.
understand, like I see all these different things about teenagers who are committing suicide because they're on these gender and sexuality spectrums, and they don't quite understand it because it's different from what the majority
Hmm.
associates with. And so it's really hard for them. And then it's like, how can you be supportive of other people if you don't even I mean, you can be supportive, but you also have to try to understand what they're dealing with. And so I've been
Yeah.
trying to get more educated about it, and I'm like, and I have conversations with my friends about it too,
Hmm.
as I
Hmm.
think most people, at least most people in my circle, all people in my circle are compassionate human beings. It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
that not knowing, because we're finally
Hmm.
having these conversations that were quietly kept. People knew things or felt things, but they either repressed them or we just
Yeah.
ignored them. We acted like we didn't notice anything.
We knew about Auntie and her roommate.
Baby, yeah, we did. And
That's just her best friend.
yes,
Okay.
forever.
Whatever.
It's
You know,
like,
but
how heartbreaking is that people have to deny who they are and
yes,
how they feel and who
yes.
they love. Like,
Mhm.
that's not okay. That's not
No,
okay. We are put
it's
here on this earth to love and to be loved openly.
mhm,
And
mhm,
so, just I think a lot of people really want to understand so that they can, move in a way that's respectful and honoring each other as humans, but just not quite knowing where to start. And
yeah,
fear is
yeah,
behind a lot of that, because, like, I had somebody snap on me once because I addressed them as the wrong pronoun, because I'm used to, I'll just call people like how if you visually look to me like a woman, I'm going to call
mhm,
you like her. And this
mhm,
person didn't identify with it, and she was really mad. And I was like,
mhm.
okay. And I felt really bad for like the rest of the day.
They were really mad?
They were really, yes, they
They okay,
they were really mad.
okay.
And I was so upset. And I thought to myself, you know what? I understand why this person felt like that, because they're
Mhm.
constantly having to defend themselves to people all day. And that gets
Yeah.
exhausting. And
Mhm,
it's easier for both of us if I would just ask. But that
mhm,
means I have to really be mindful of that when I meet people and talk to people, and not
mhm.
make assumptions about who you are. But that's
Yeah,
like a lot of unlearning and everything. So I
yeah,
think that we all have to have like compassion. But one of the things that my wellness coach said to me is that the burden is on the people who've had the privilege.
That's exactly it.
And because you have had the privilege, the burden is on you. If anybody is going to
Mhm.
quote go out of their way, it needs to be
Mhm.
you because you've enjoyed the
Mhm.
privilege. And I was like, oh,
Absolutely. Yeah.
I can receive that. I can receive that.
Yeah. And it's it continues to be an area of growth for me. I'm not 100%, all the time. And
Mhm.
so what I have learned to do is just ask what are your pronouns. I have my pronouns in my email signature
Mhm.
because I want to normalize and let you know, like, hey, I want to respect you
Yeah.
and respect who you are and how you identify, not just my perception of who you are.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is a learning curve, but we can learn.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people are afraid of messing up, so they don't even attempt
Yeah.
to learn.
Yeah.
But sometimes you're gonna fall on your face, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Um, you put it back
Yeah.
together.
And you know in your heart also, and that's how I ultimately like had to get over that. I was like, I know in my heart I wasn't trying to be disrespectful. God
Yeah.
knows I wasn't trying to be disrespectful. And
Mhm,
moving forward, like that's something that I will keep in mind. And but
mhm.
you hit the nail on the head. A lot of people don't try because they're afraid of messing up. And it's okay.
Yeah,
Like it's okay.
mhm.
Most people,
Yeah,
I would say probably like 95% of people, just as long as they know that you're coming from a place of really, I'm just trying to get to know you as another human, they're gonna be
that's
good.
it. Yes, that is it.
Yes.
That's it right
But yeah,
there.
you gave me like, because especially when you talked about Christianity, because ooh Lord,
Oh, yeah.
like that just complicates everything. So
It does, and I don't think that it has to
mhm.
complicate things. I think that it can actually enrich things,
Yeah,
but because of how, we've been taught about sexuality within the Christian context,
yeah,
it makes it complicated.
yeah,
But like I said, it can actually be an enriching experience. One of my colleagues, she's a Christian sexologist. She talks about how Christianity is inherently sex positive, but it's been propagated and pushed out as being sex negative,
hmm,
just because of how it's been used
yeah,
to oppress as
hmm,
opposed to free.
hmm,
But Jesus came to free, set free, and deliver. Um,
yeah.
but it's almost like how come that you might have life and have life more abundantly, but not good sex? No, no, no. Good sex is included in that abundant life, you know? So,
That's a perfect note to end it on because you've given me like eight other, like you just have to come back and talk like all the time,
I got you.
like
I
all the
got
time.
you.
Because even when you said like orgasms, I was like, oh yeah, we got to have a whole conversation, like a whole conversation about that, a whole conversation
Hmm.
about that, and yeah, yeah, because what I really appreciate about you is that you also incorporate the Christian perspective because for a lot of us that is a source of conflict. And like you said, it doesn't have to be, but the
Hmm.
conditioning is real. It's
It is
real.
very real. It's very real. I talk about that in the book chapter that I wrote. It's called Holy Sex,
Yeah.
and I look at, well, actually, yeah, I look at using mindfulness and aspects of narrative therapy and Black existential thought to help Christians kind of break free so that they can have that abundant life that includes good sex,
Absolutely.
and understanding that they are whole persons in Christ. Um, yeah.
So you have to, I'm going to reach over here and grab my copy of the book. I want you to tell
Yeah.
us about your recent publication. Congratulations.
Yes.
So tell us about
Thank
that
you
while I reach
so
over here and
much.
grab it.
Okay, yeah, I'm very excited to have been included in this amazing book. It's actually written more so for
Yeah.
practitioners. of sex therapy. But
What?
yes, that's it right there.
Yay!
Right there, right there. An intersectional approach to sex therapy. And so every chapter is written by a person of color, but it talks about working in sexuality with people of color from different aspects. So, like I said, my chapter talks about providing sex therapy to Christians, specifically those who are interested in maintaining a connection to their faith. A lot of resources are available for people who have. Uh, Kind of separated from the faith. And I get it. I understand why, because church hurt and religious trauma is very real. However, there are some people who still want to keep a connection to the faith, although they may
Mhm.
not remain connected to that specific house of worship
Yeah.
that caused the harm. And so I explore different ways of doing that and use different tools, like I mentioned, using mindfulness,
Yeah.
aspects of narrative therapy, Black existential thought, and threw some Audre Lorde in there as
Yes.
well, just to keep it funky,
Yep.
but just to give options for people who do want to continue to explore their sexuality within their faith.
Yeah. Thank you for doing thank you for honoring your gift and your purpose.
Thank you.
It's so needed, and
Thank you.
I've have read the book, um,
Ah,
and I was just like, I love to see, for one thing, I'm all about seeing Black women's voices out there. So that
yes.
was really exciting for me, first of all, and then just being able to have a resource out there for other practitioners, aspiring practitioners,
Hmm.
and everything. It's
Hmm.
just, this is what we need. And I think it's important
Thank
for
you.
people to know that you don't have to choose. You don't have
You
to
don't.
choose to be a Christian or to be a sexual human being. You you can and should have both in your life.
Absolutely. 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 You can and should have both. I keep saying that same scripture, but it's so true, and that's just kind of what's sticking to me today. Of that abundant life. It includes good sex. It doesn't have to be um we can be whole persons in Christ. And in being a whole person, that includes our sexuality, it includes how we identify. Psalm 139 applies to you, inclusive of how you identify. You are still God's good creation,
Mhm.
inclusive of how you identify,
Yeah.
who you love, who you have sex with, all of that. It's not just limited to cisgender heterosexual people. That ain't in the word.
No.
Um, when God created humanity in God's image, and we are so diverse.
Yes.
The way that we look, the way we're made up. And what makes sense to me is that if God created us in God's image, all of us are reflections of God, all of us,
Yes.
each and every one, and we're so different. So that means that
Yeah.
God is inclusive.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's love. That's
And that's
that's the
love.
definition of love.
Yeah.
Inclusivity. Yeah.
I'm with it. I'm
Yes.
with it.
Yay! Ending on a happy note. So, one of the things I did want to say is, for those of you in the audience who are not on my email list, you will be missing out, because one of the things I'm going to do is have a giveaway for a copy of this book for someone who's on my email list. So, if you're not signed up already, make sure you go to sheconfidential.com and take that link and make sure you're on the email list, because there's going to be a drawing the week that this episode is released, for those who are on the email list. So I'm really
Awesome.
excited about somebody else getting gifted a copy. It won't be my copy because I highlighted stuff in here, so I'll be ordering a new one for somebody. But make sure you all sign up at sheconfidential.com so that you can be part of that drawing, because that's going to come from the email list. And can you share your website and social media information so people can follow you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am on Instagram and Twitter at Sankofa Sex. So Sankofa is spelled S as in Sam, Ankofa. So again, that's Sankofa Sex on Instagram and Twitter. My website is sankofasextherapy.com. So you can reach me there.
And I'll have all those links in the description box for the podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, as well as a link for the book as well. And I'm Charlene Ketchum. Make sure you all, if you're not already, make sure you're subscribed so that you get alerts for new episodes on the podcast and on the YouTube channel. We're going to have some different content on each of those platforms. So you want to be following or subscribed on both. And you've been watching, listening to She Confidential. So thank you so much, DeAndrea. Thank you, audience.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me as always. It's always good to chat with you.
Yes, well, yeah, I'm inviting you back because like we got to talk
Yes.
about orgasms and so many other delicious, yummy things. So
Yes. Yes. Just let me know.
yes,
Let me know.
so